You have gathered here because somewhere in your life you have encountered the shadow disguised as a human face. Perhaps it came to you in the form of a friend who never truly rejoiced in your victories, or a lover whose tenderness always carried an unspoken threat, or a parent whose love was given only on the condition that you obeyed the silent rules of their fragility. This figure, this presence, belongs to what we call the narcissist, though I would rather call it the wounded archetype of the false self. It is a mask, carefully constructed, hiding a void that cannot bear to be seen. And when such a person discovers that you are no longer susceptible to their games, that your soul has grown strong enough to resist their grasp, they will reach for their final act of control, their last desperate manipulation. Understand this. The narcissist lives not from their own source of energy, but from yours. They feed upon the subtle chords of your psyche, the projections you willingly extend towards them, the admiration, the fear, the pity. All of these become like ropes tying you to their inner emptiness. And when you cut those ropes, when you withdraw the projections and look at them with the clear eye of the self, they tremble with terror. For now, the mask risks falling away, and behind it is nothing but the abyss of the unlived life, the abandoned child, the shadow they never dared to embrace. It is at this moment, when you stand too strong to be subdued, that they will employ what I call the final manipulation. They will attempt to invert the mirror to make you believe that you are the very thing they have always been. They will accuse you of being selfish, cold, cruel, ungrateful. They will project their own shadow upon you, hoping that you will carry it again as you once did. And if you are not awake, you may find yourself confused, questioning whether your strength is truly arrogance, whether your boundaries are truly acts of cruelty, whether your refusal to submit is a sin against love itself. Here is where the great drama of individuation unfolds. For the narcissist plays the role of the trickster archetype at its darkest. They force you into confrontation with your own shadow, with the parts of yourself that secretly fear being selfish, with the guilt that arises when you dare to live for yourself, with the terror of being unloved if you refuse to play the servant. Their manipulation is a test. It is a crucible, one that burns away illusions, and it is only through this trial that the true self begins to emerge. I want you to imagine a dream. In this dream, you are standing in a great hall of mirrors. Each mirror reflects a different image of you, some beautiful, some monstrous, some distorted beyond recognition. The narcissist stands beside you and points to the most grotesque reflection, saying, "This is who you are. Look at you. You are cruel. You are selfish. You are unlovable." If you remain asleep in the dream, you will believe them. You will bow your head in shame, and the narcissist will regain their power. But if you awaken within the dream, you will realize that none of these reflections are the whole of you. They are fragments, shadows, distortions. And when you turn away from the mirrors and look inward, you will find the self untouched, radiant, beyond the reach of any reflection. This awakening is not merely psychological, it is mystical. For the battle with the narcissist is not only with another human being, but with an archetypal force that dwells within you. The external narcissist is but a projection of your own inner tyrant. The voice within that whispers you must please others to be loved, that punishes you for daring to assert yourself, that tells you strength is selfishness. To face them is to face this inner persecutor. To resist their final manipulation is to silence that inner voice and to crown your own sovereignty. Do not be deceived by their tears, their sudden confessions, their carefully staged vulnerability. These are not the tears of true feeling, but the calculated gestures of one who senses the loss of their supply. They cry, not because they feel, but because they fear abandonment. Their vulnerability is a performance meant to lure you back into the role of savior. If you rush to rescue them, you return to the prison willingly. If you hold your ground, if you see the performance for what it is, you will discover the secret they have always hidden, that your strength terrifies them, because it reveals the weakness they cannot bear to acknowledge in themselves. Let me tell you this. Every narcissist is a failed alchemist. They have encountered their shadow, but instead of integrating it, they have projected it outward and built an empire of control to defend against it, where you wrestle with your darkness to find gold. They flee from theirs and turn others into vessels for their despair. But you must not become their vessel. You must not carry what belongs to them. The alchemy of your soul demands that you give their shadow back to them, that you let them face the abyss they have avoided. This act is not cruelty, though they will call it so. It is the highest form of love, for it respects the integrity of your own soul and demands that they finally take responsibility for theirs. You will notice as you grow strong that their accusations grow louder. They may attempt to smear your name, to turn others against you, to weave narratives in which you are the villain. Do not be shaken by this, for what they truly seek is to destabilize your sense of identity. If they can make you doubt yourself, you will once again bend to their will. This is the final manipulation, the war for your own perception of yourself. And here is where you must hold the deepest line. You must say to yourself, I know who I am. I will not wear the masks they offer me. I will not be defined by their fear. And here the archetype of the hero emerges. For to resist the narcissist is not merely to resist another person. It is to slay the dragon of illusion that has haunted your lineage for generations. Many of you were trained in childhood to carry the shadows of your parents, to bear the guilt that was not yours, to live in obedience to unspoken rules. The narcissist is but the continuation of this pattern, the familiar tyrant in a new form. When you refuse their final manipulation, you are not only freeing yourself, but breaking the chain of ancestral bondage. You are declaring that the shadow ends here, that you will no longer pass it forward. Thus, the encounter with the narcissist becomes a sacred initiation. It is not random, nor meaningless. It is the summons to awaken to the power of the self. to face the archetype of the deceiver and come forth purified, and though it is painful, though it feels at times like death, it is in truth a rebirth, for only when the false self of obedience and guilt dies can the true self of sovereignty and love be born. So I tell you, when the narcissist sees that you are too strong to control, do not fear their final manipulation. See it for what it is, the last act of a crumbling illusion, the desperate grasp of a mask that cannot survive the light. Hold steady in the truth of your being. Let the words fall like shadows on the ground, unable to touch your essence, and know that in this moment you are not merely resisting a person, but fulfilling the ancient work of the soul, the integration of shadow, the triumph of self, the liberation of the human spirit. The soul trembles when it begins to see with clarity. For so long you may have been bound within the labyrinth of their charm, their dominance, their subtle threats, their hidden needs, disguised as love. The narcissist has studied your wounds as though they were sacred maps. They know how to touch the precise scar that will make you flinch, how to whisper the word that awakens your hidden shame, how to place themselves at the very center of your unconscious longings. This is not intelligence, but instinct, the predatory instinct of one who cannot bear the weight of their own emptiness. And yet, when you awaken, when you step into your own authority, they sense the shifting tides. Their power is threatened, and so they summon the final manipulation, the last desperate attempt to pull you back into their orbit. This manipulation often takes the form of reversal. They will reverse the entire story of your relationship, making themselves the victim and you the aggressor. They will paint themselves as the wounded child and you as the cruel parent, themselves as the abandoned lover and you as the betrayer, themselves as the righteous one and you as the sinner. And if you have not yet integrated the parts of yourself that fear, cruelty, abandonment, betrayal, you will find yourself ensnared once more in the net of their projection. You will seek to prove your innocence, to defend your love, to explain your intentions. But every explanation feeds the trap, for in explaining, you have already accepted their premise. The only way to resist this reversal is to awaken to the symbolic truth that you are not what they claim, nor what the distorted mirror reflects. You are larger than their story. You are the dreamer who has entered the dream and recognized it as dream. To argue within the dream is to remain asleep. To awaken is to step beyond the dream altogether, to realize that their accusations are not revelations of your nature, but echoes of their own unintegrated shadow. Consider the archetype of the scapegoat. Throughout human history, communities have sought to place their sins, their failures, their terrors upon one figure, and then cast that figure out, believing that in their exile, the community is purified. This archetype repeats itself in the dynamics of the narcissist. When you refuse to carry their shadow, they will attempt to cast you as scapegoat. They will accuse, condemn, exile, smear. But remember, The scapegoat is not cursed. The scapegoat is chosen precisely because it is strong enough to bear what others cannot face. And in bearing it, and then releasing it, the scapegoat becomes the bringer of transformation. You must not carry their shadow into your soul, but you must recognize the sacred role of the test, that you are being asked to step beyond the collective lie and into the freedom of individuation. Do not imagine that this path is easy. The narcissist's accusations will awaken every dormant fear within you. If as a child you were told you were selfish, when you try to assert yourself, their words will sting with uncanny familiarity. If you were shamed for desiring freedom, their charges of cruelty will echo in your bones. It is as though the narcissist holds the keys to your earliest wounds and uses them with surgical precision. But here lies the paradox. They are both your tormentor and your unwitting healer, for in facing their manipulation, you are forced to confront the very shadows you might otherwise have avoided for a lifetime. You are compelled to examine the guilt that has lived unspoken in your psyche, to bring it to consciousness, to test it against the truth of your present strength. This is the alchemical fire. The narcissist becomes the furnace in which the base metals of guilt and shame are transmuted into the gold of sovereignty. They force you to decide whether you will continue to live enslaved by projections or whether you will claim the authority of your own being. And this decision is not made once, but again and again, for the manipulation will come in waves. Sometimes they will attack, sometimes they will seduce, sometimes they will collapse in apparent helplessness. Each mask is designed to test your resolve, to see whether you will slip back into the old role. But what is the truth behind all of this? The truth is that the narcissist is terrified. Their soul is like a house of mirrors, filled only with reflections and no substance. They have built their entire existence upon the energy of others. To lose you is to lose the scaffolding of their identity. They would rather destroy the bond than face themselves, and so they use the final manipulation as a shield against the unbearable silence of their own soul. When you see this clearly, something shifts within you. Compassion awakens, not the naive compassion that rushes to rescue, but the higher compassion that recognizes the tragedy of the human condition. You see that the narcissist is a prisoner of their own shadow, chained not by your strength, but by their refusal to turn inward. You do not hate them, for hatred binds you still. You do not rescue them, for rescue would trap you again. You simply stand in your truth, allowing them to fall into the hands of their own fate. This is the most difficult act of all, for it demands that you accept their suffering without making it your own. In this moment, you embody the archetype of the self. You are no longer the child seeking approval, no longer the partner begging for love, no longer the scapegoat carrying another's sins. You are the sovereign one, the axis around which your life turns. The narcissist senses this, and it terrifies them, for they cannot control one who stands rooted in the self. Their last manipulation collapses like a stage play when the audience refuses to believe. The masks fall to the floor, and the emptiness is revealed yet do not imagine that this is the end. The narcissist may depart, but the inner archetype remains. You will still hear the echo of their voice in your mind, whispering doubts, stirring guilt. This is the internalized narcissist, the inner tyrant, born of years of conditioning. And here, the deeper work begins. You must confront not only the external figure, but the inner structure that once made their control possible. You must examine the unconscious bargains you made, your willingness to sacrifice truth for belonging, your fear of abandonment, your hunger for approval. These are the roots that must be unearthed if the tree of your freedom is to grow strong. And so the battle becomes inward. Each time the inner voice accuses you, pause and ask, is this the truth of my being? Or is this the shadow that once ruled me? Each time guilt arises, examine whether it belongs to the present moment or to the echoes of the past. Each time you feel the urge to justify, to explain, to defend, recognize that you are being pulled back into the dream of reversal, and gently, steadily return to yourself. This is the essence of individuation. To face the manipulations of the narcissist is to be forced into the crucible of the self. It is not enough to escape their grasp externally. You must also dissolve the bonds internally. And when this work is done, when you have walked through the fire and come forth with gold in your hands, you will realize something astonishing. The narcissist was never your true enemy. They were the carrier of your shadow, the unwitting messenger of your own unclaimed strength. By resisting them, you were not only freeing yourself from their control, but awakening to the totality of your soul. There comes a silence after the storm, and this silence can be the most disorienting moment of all. For when the narcissist sees that their tricks no longer bind you, when their final manipulation collapses before the strength of your awakened soul, they retreat into an emptiness that echoes louder than any words they once spoke. And you, standing there, may feel a strange mixture of victory and loss. Victory, because you are no longer their prisoner. Loss, because the entire drama that once gave shape to your suffering suddenly ends, leaving you in a wide, unsettling freedom. The soul is unaccustomed to such vastness, and so it trembles. It is here that the deeper danger begins, not from them, but from within you. The psyche longs for what is familiar, even if the familiar has been poisonous. To live without manipulation feels strange to one who has been shaped by it since childhood. You may find yourself missing the intensity, the fire of conflict, the strange intoxication of being wanted. Even if only as prey, you may dream of them, not as they truly were, but as the idealized image you once carried, the fantasy that first bound you. And in these dreams, the shadow whispers, return, return to what you know, return to the cycle. This whisper is more dangerous than their accusations ever were, for it comes from within your own unconscious. At this threshold, the myth of Orpheus offers a lesson Orpheus descended into the underworld to retrieve his beloved Eurydice, and the gods permitted it on one condition, that he not look back until they had reached the light, but in the final moment, overcome by longing and doubt, he turned his head, and she vanished forever into the shadows. The narcissist is your Eurydice, not because they are your beloved, but because they represent the part of your soul still entangled in darkness. When you turn back, you lose yourself again. The work now is to resist the temptation to look back, to continue walking toward the light of your own individuation, even as the voices of memory, guilt, and longing call out behind you. This stage of the journey demands a fierce solitude. It is the solitude of one who no longer allows themselves to be defined by another's perception. The narcissist's final manipulation attempts to chain you through narrative. They write the story, and you are cast in the role they assign. To break free is to write your own story, and to endure the loneliness of being misunderstood by those still under their spell. They may turn others against you, painting you as the villain. They may use community itself as a weapon, isolating you from the herd. But remember, individuation always requires the courage to leave the herd. Christ himself, as archetype, bore the weight of exile and misunderstanding, and in that exile revealed the deeper truth of the soul. Do not underestimate how deeply this manipulation cuts. It is not simply an accusation, it is an assault on your very sense of reality. Gaslighting, as it is called in modern language, is the attempt to convince you that your perception cannot be trusted. When you no longer yield to their direct control, they seek to erode your trust in yourself. They whisper that your memories are wrong, that your feelings are invalid, that your conclusions are madness. This is not only psychological warfare, it is archetypal possession, for in that moment, the trickster archetype seizes the field, sowing chaos in your mind, blurring the line between truth and illusion. To withstand this, you must anchor yourself not in their words, not even in external validation, but in the deeper knowing of the self. The self speaks not in arguments, but in quiet certainties. It whispers through dreams, through synchronicities, through the deep resonance of truth that needs no defense. When you learn to listen to this voice, you become unassailable. Their accusations wash over you like waves against a mountain. You may feel the spray, but the rock remains unmoved. This is the strength they fear most, not the strength of defiance, which can still be provoked, but the strength of inner stillness, which no manipulation can touch. In this stillness, the archetypes rearrange themselves within you, where once the child archetype ruled, seeking love at any cost. Now, the wise old man or woman begins to emerge, bearing the torch of inner authority, where once the martyr archetype drove you to sacrifice yourself for their needs, now the warrior rises, guarding the boundaries of your soul. And where once the trickster ruled the stage through confusion, now the self begins to shine as the hidden center, the axis mundi around which your psyche orbits, this is a birth of wholeness. And it comes only after the final manipulation is seen and withstood. Yet, we must be careful here. To demonize the narcissist entirely is to miss the alchemical lesson, for even in their darkest manipulations, they serve a sacred role. They bring you to the edge of your own unconscious